Hey, Journey. I wanted to share something with you today that was on my mind, but um, I'm sure some probably can relate to this. But anybody ever feel like they're in the fire? Like it just seems like there's always something going on, or you're in this storm, and fire's got a way of surrounding things, right? And it's hard to get away from fire. And I'm not making light of any forest fires in Canada or anything that's going on within the U.S. right now. This is just speaking from the heart on something that touched me as I was thinking about it today. But there are times that are things going on, and man, it just feels like it's like we're in this fire and it's going to consume us, and we always don't know what to do with it. And today I want to encourage you to not pray for God to put the fire out, but for God to increase the heat and rejoice while you're in the fire. You know, I used to really enjoy blacksmithing. I used to make a lot of knives, and there was one thing that, I'd learn about knives is you get a piece of steel depending on that type of steel, and there's a plethora of different types of steels that you can make things with, but you have to heat them up. And when you heat things up in a very hot fire, something begins to happen. One, it begins to glow, and then you pull it out, and there's this scale on some steels that you have to take off with a wire brush because it's impurities that the fire is actually pulling out. And the same thing goes for us as disciples, and as we're walking with Jesus. We sometimes are in this fire. I'm not saying that God is the cause for it. There are things that we will go through in this life, but God will use them to grow us and refine us. And there is times that we're in this fire, and I said increase the heat, right? Well, as you increase the heat and you're in this fire, God works on the impurities that are in us, and we come out on the other side of it a whole lot better. There's something about fire, and when we're facing things, and it causes us to get a little bit more focused. And I know that if I didn't focus when I was pounding on a piece of steel, that steel could burn me really bad, and it didn't, because I was focused. And when we start focusing on His Word, and we start focusing on the Holy Spirit and God, things begin to happen, and He starts to work the impurities out. There's nothing like a good old fire to take out the wrong motives in our hearts, to take out things that only He knows about. But all these little impurities, and you may ask why I'm saying, well, why would He want to do that? It's because He wants you to be all that He's created you to be. And there are some impurities maybe left inside of you, and you might be in this fire or in this storm, but as today we're going to say fire, and it may feel like heat, but you're in this fire right now, and you just don't understand completely why you're in it. But maybe it's because He's actually working out impurities in you. And nobody likes being in it. Nobody. I don't even like being in it, but it's for our own good. And, I've noticed with some steels when I'm blacksmithing too, that you put it into a certain temperature and you bring it out and you start to work with it and you're hammering on it, and it doesn't want to move, and it doesn't want to shape the way that you want it to shape. So what do you got to do? You got to increase the heat. And sometimes there are some flames and fires that we may feel that we're going through are going to be hotter than others. And you may laugh when I say this, but some steels are a lot more stubborn, and they have to take more heat and more flame in order for them to be shaped and conformed into what I would want them to become, as far as making a shape of a knife or whatever that looks like, right? Well, I mean, the same thing goes for us. There are some of us that are more stubborn than others. Hello. It's true. If you just admit it, it's true. But there are some of us that are stubborn and may not want to bend to God's will or completely and fully surrender to Him, that maybe our flame needs to be turned up a little bit to really truly get us to focus on what God is really saying to us. And when he turns up the heat, there's a tendency for us to mold and be shaped just a little bit easier, because guess what? God's way is the best way, right? There's no other way that is more perfect than following God, because God's never going to leave you nor forsake you. He's not going to fail you. But our flesh sometimes needs more heat in order for it to be shaped. And through that process, hey, I look at it this way. It's also getting rid of impurities. I remember in the Old Testament, 3 guys, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And they followed the Lord, and they stayed with the Lord even though there were things going on there in that story. And I'm not going to get into all that because I want to keep this short for you. But they ended up getting thrown in a fire, alive. They got thrown in a fire. And it was a witness that said that they seen a fourth with them in that fire, but not one hair on their head, not one thing on their clothes, their skin, everything. They come out of that fire clean, but there was somebody with them, and that was Jesus, right? Well, that's the thing. When we're in the fire, Jesus doesn't leave us. He walks with us. And we feel like sometimes we're forsaken or we're forgotten about because we're in this fire right now, and it's a tremendous, it feels like a tremendous heat sometimes. There's a tremendous pressure. Well, guess what? When you take a piece of coal and it's under pressure for a long time, it becomes a diamond, right? So when we got this pressure in this fire, it's shaping us, and it's actually forming us, and that's something to be said. But Jesus never leaves us in the middle of it. And then, once you in blacksmithing, once you shape a knife and you get it to the exact specifications that you're looking for in size, thickness, and everything, hear what I'm saying now, then it's got to be heat treated. Well, guess what? Maybe you've been through some fires in your life, and God's been plucking and he's been removing all these impurities, and he's having you and shaping you to become all that you've been created to be in him, so you can glorify him and him alone. But now you're back in this fire because it's time for heat treat. Because when you heat treat steel, you heat treat it to a certain temperature, and it comes out hard enough that after that sharpness of that blade has been installed on that blade, that it can't be broken. It can't be dulled very easily. It can't be dented because there's a hardness. There's been a heat treatment that's been done to it. Well, guess what? Our heat treatment's in the Word. When we read the Word, he sharpens us, and he builds our faith when we're in the fire, because he lets us know that he's not going to leave us, right? But the thing of it is that we allow ourselves to be heat treated, we come out sharper, and we come out a lot more prepared on the other side for whatever plans that he has for us in our lives. So what am I saying today, Pastor? I'm saying, look, rejoice in the fire. Rejoice in it. I know that sounds crazy, but guess what? Rejoice in it. Don't pray for God to put it out. Rejoice in it. Ask him what he's trying to do in your life and show you. Maybe it's some impurities that need to be gone and need to be out of your life permanently through Jesus Christ. And maybe you've been in that fire, but now you're back for heat treatment, and you're so close to be ready to be able to walk into his will completely. And he's just finishing up a few things. I've made some of the prettiest blades, and I'm not that great of a blacksmith, and God is the ultimate blacksmith. He's the perfect creator, right? He has painted some of the most beautiful pictures in the world, and we can just look at the landscape and see. And one of the most beautiful things that he's ever created is you. But sometimes we need those defining touches on us, and he molds us and he shapes us sometimes with fire. So if you're in the fire right now, rejoice, and know that he is with you and he hasn't forsaken you, and allow it to shape you and mold you and let you become all that he's created you to be. Know you're loved, know that you matter, because God corrects those that he loves. He shapes us. He gives us a way. All we have to do is be obedient. So just rejoice in that fire today. Know that there's a purpose for it, behind it. And God may be using a storm in your life right now to show you something, but God is with you. He hasn't let go of you. and just remain faithful and obedient. And before you know it, you'll be on the other side of that, and you're going to be sharp, you're going to be heat treated, and you are going to be ready to do whatever that God has called you to do. Listen, everything takes time. Everything takes time, but rejoice in the fires today and ask him what he is trying to show you. We'll talk to you soon. Take care. Love you.